Here we go. First one. Republicans.
Astray.
Okay. Democrats.
Pretend not to know things they know.
Okay. Global warming / climate change.
More serious than we give it credit for.
Okay. Donald Trump.
Entertainment.
Hillary Clinton.
Bought. I mean, God, poor Hillary Clinton. I'm sure that she doesn't mean most of what she says, and yet she knows very acutely how to play the game.
Gay marriage.
Uncontroversial. Again,
Muslims.
in need of reformation. Where do my views come from? They come from my parents and my personal ideology. And why do I think that? Because I'm a victim of my own confirmation bias, and I seek out information that confirms or supports my views, and I ignore information that doesn't. And this is what most people do, this is what most voters do, and this is, I'm sure, what most politicians do. And yet I know that there's data out there and really intelligent, informed opinions from people who have studied this their entire life. The reason that science is so successful at truth apprehension is because the whole system of science is rigged to control for our own, the way that we naturally want to think. Science is all about, you come up with a theory, great, now do everything you can to prove yourself wrong.
Yeah.
But we don't do that. Our brains don't have time and energy to do that. And it's so much easier to confirm something that we already believe than to knock it all off the table and start all over again. And I mean, so let's say I have an opinion on police brutality and systematic racism. I believe that cops are racist. Let's say that's something I believe. What am I going to do? I'm going to go online and I'm going to look at all the videos of cops being just brutal and racist toward people of color, and I'm going to ignore all the evidence to the contrary. Now, I'm not saying I'm not saying I'm wrong or right on the particular issue. Whether I'm right or wrong, I'm still counting the hits and ignoring the misses. I'm incorporating information that's favorable to my ideology, and I'm either ignoring or dismissing or rationalizing away information that's not. And we all do that. There's another part of me, maybe a conservative part of me, I don't know, that's really bothered that you can have people that have no education and no information available to them, and they're allowed to vote. That you don't have to pass a test, you don't have to demonstrate your own competence, you don't have to show that you know the issues or understand any facts whatsoever. You can be completely misinformed and you can still vote. I mean, just imagine how different the Middle East would be if there was no such thing as the Promised Land. I mean, if there was no such thing as Zion. If all of Israel were fine, had no problem just packing their shit and moving to somewhere else, I think the Middle East would look very differently. You hear somebody say jihad or Islamism, and then you have a backlash of people going, well, I'm Muslim and I don't believe that, so you're a bigot. And so we're kind of playing this game of keep away, where we're not having the conversation that we should be having because nobody wants to offend anybody. A lot of Western civilizations have this underlying principle or value that you do not criticize beliefs. You can criticize people, sure. You can criticize actions, sure. You don't criticize beliefs. That's a problem. There are some European countries that actually have made it illegal to deny the Holocaust. I think this is true in France. I think it's true in Britain. It's illegal to deny the Holocaust. That's insane. If it's illegal to deny we need Holocaust deniers to be loud and obnoxious so that everyone else can jump on them, so that they can be criticized.
Keep their brains working. issuing marriage
The whole
certificates.
point of freedom of speech is also the freedom to put your foot in your mouth,
Right.
and to be ridiculed. And thankfully, I mean, one of the best things that the United States has going for it is the freedom to criticize. Is having "In God We Trust" on our dollar bill a violation of the separation of church and state? I don't know. I don't think so. But we, you know,
Do
we
you
ha-
like that? Do you think that's a better national motto than "Ne pluribus unum"?
No, I think it's ridiculous, and it wasn't even added until 1954 after the
Right.
Korean War. And
Right.
it's like it's not a founding document or the founding principle of our country at all. But I do wish that we could overhaul our healthcare system. I would love to see what a single payer system would look like. I do believe. Okay, putting my philosophy hat on instead of my political hat, I think we should have a right to healthcare. That does make sense to me. I was surprised to find out recently that we have net zero immigrants coming into this country. And yet, immigration is like one of the biggest hot topics in like this presidential race and in politics in general. So if we really have fewer immigrants coming in than we ever have before, I guess I'm not clear on what exactly the problem is, where it's manifesting, and how we can be totally sure that immigration is the source of that problem.
Is the amount of money you pay in income tax fair?
Nah, man. No. I'm in the top tax bracket, and I make a couple $100,000 a year, and there are people that are making millions and millions of dollars a year, and I'm in the same tax bracket. So that does that seems problematic to me. I guess the base function of government would be to protect rights. And then you build from there, I think. I would say that Republicans have a very bad habit of pretending to know things they don't know, and Democrats have a very bad habit of pretending not to know things they do. You know, liberals get criticized by conservatives for being too politically correct. Well, part of political correctness is pretending not to know things that you do know.
Right.
And one example of that is so a terrorist flies a plane into a building at however many 1,000 miles an hour, and they tell you exactly why they're doing it, and we go, I don't know, it must be because of Iraq.
Okay.
But religious beliefs is a problem.
Right.
If I could, make that all go away and everybody suddenly has secular values, that would be awesome. Whatever you might believe about the nature-nurture debate, I think you have to acknowledge that parenting matters. And it's way, 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 way undervalued. I think procreating is way overvalued, and actually parenting is undervalued. And I'd like to make sure that nobody has children unless they are invested and educated and has the resources to care for those children. Take two substances. You have marijuana and you have alcohol.
Right.
By any standard, pick a standard, any standard, by any standard, alcohol's worse.
Right.
Alcohol is more dangerous, alcohol is more addictive. I mean, pick a rubric.
Right.
And yet one is illegal and the other isn't. So when I hear somebody defending the illegality of something like marijuana, I always ask them what argument can be made for criminalizing marijuana that can't be made for alcohol, and what argument can be made for legalizing alcohol that can't be made for marijuana. There isn't one. You can't do it.
Right.
And so this is just pure irrationality. I think anybody should be allowed to own a gun, provided you meet certain criteria for competency. But I think that anybody who owns a gun should have to pass a test, like with a driver's license.
Right.
I mean, I think I should be allowed to own a gun, but I should have to do 50 hours of gun safety training. I
Right.
should have to own a lockbox. I think that the government should be able to tell me, yes, you can have a gun, but you have to be able to prove that you're capable of handling a gun, and you have to be able to prove that you can store it safely if you have, say, a child in the house or something like that. School for me was so monotonous and mind-numbing because all I was doing was memorizing facts.
Right.
Nobody taught me how to think, or how to solve problems, or how to be critical or philosophical or thoughtful. I mean, none of the tools that I use in my life did I learn from school. School was a bunch of facts that I had to memorize that I very quickly forgot. And except for one, there was one teacher that had an elective that he got to kind of come up with his own elective, and his elective was problem solving. And I loved that class. It taught me how to memorize things. It taught me tricks for how to learn more effectively, how to think, how to be critical, how to evaluate this or that. And that is the one thing from high school that I've been able to apply for the rest of my life. And so I wish high school were more about, well, two things. One is how to think.
Right.
And the other is life skills. Nobody gets taught. I wish I had learned how to balance a checkbook in high school.
Right.
Nobody taught me how to balance a checkbook. Nobody taught me how to do my taxes.
Yeah.
I wish. So if I wish high school focused on those two
Nice.
things.
Very nice.